Okay, let's start chapter 9. Okay, welfare effects of free trade. So here, in this first part here, we're asked about consumer surplus and producer surplus. So as you can see here, it's placing the consumer surplus. The consumer surplus is it's marking everything wrong because the due date, the due time is now passed, and so it thinks I got everything wrong. But the consumer surplus would be the area below the demand curve, the dark blue line here, the area below the demand curve to the price being where demand and where supply and demand meet. So that price there at 310, it'd be the area under the demand curve to 310. So as you can see, that's the green area here. The producer surplus would be the area above the supply curve to the price. That would be this purple area here. Pretty cool how it just showed up there, huh? Now we need to calculate this. So let's talk a little bit about how to calculate these things. So if this is the consumer surplus, the area is equal to 1/2 base times height. The height of this triangle would be the equilibrium quantity. The height is going to be the difference between the equilibrium price, P star, and the y-intercept, which is right here. That's going to be the base. So, with that said, let's go back to this. So that would be 1/2 times 175. Okay. 1/2 base times height. So okay, so hoping that it would say that that is the answer. Oh, it wants me to do both. So just as I would have gotten this wrong because I didn't read totally. It says total surplus. So now I need to add to that 310 times. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I just looking at that too quickly. Um, the price, oddly enough, in this graph is starting at 210 at the base. So I was just putting that as a 0 for the price as well, which is typically what is done. If I were making this question, I would not have done that. But 0, I put 210. Okay, so that changes. Sorry about that. And there we go. That was a trick question, huh? Okay. Then we've got a price a price in this case that's the world price versus the domestic price, and we need to resolve this. So now the triangle is this much larger area here, the consumer surplus, the smaller area here. Resolve those triangles. For the amount of the export, that's going to be our difference between that price, the at the price of 350, the 105 that's demanded, and here the 245 that's supplied. So that'd be a difference of 140, which is right here. And then you can finish the rest of those. Then we would start to put all of the numbers in here for consumer surplus and producer surplus. And we would be able to, at that point, we'd be able to calculate how much the consumer surplus changes. Let's here. I don't necessarily want to solve the whole thing because your numbers are going to be different than my numbers. So domestic supply, domestic demand. And we're saying that if the world price is up here, that area right there is going to be the amount that is exported. And then you would calculate that consumer surplus. And you're going to compare it to that consumer surplus. You can call that consumer surplus no trade, consumer surplus trade. So you would compare those two areas to one another. And that's going to be how you can start to calculate these differences. I know it's kind of a shortened way of doing this. If in reading the answer, if it really doesn't make sense to you, then send myself an email and we can look at your specific numbers and get a better solution for you. Okay. Now, winners and losers from free trade. So we have an economy where Meekers, I don't even know what Meekers are. Domestic price of Meekers is $40. World price is $39. And Meekertown can't really influence the price. So if it did allow free trade, then what's it going to do? It's going to be importing Meekers. It's going to be importing them because it's cheaper abroad. So it is true, it does import them. And then these conditions, as we compare them, yes, the consumers would have been worse off without free trade because they would have been stuck paying 40 when in fact the cheaper price was the 39. And as for producers, the domestic producers in Meekertown are worse off. At least they're worse off with the free trade. They're actually not worse off without the free trade, which is what this question's answering. And the reason why is because they are basically bad producers of Meekers. They produce it at $40 when the world does it at 39. And so that would mean that they are going to be protected in an environment where they can't engage in free trade. Hence, it's false. And then we've got these comparisons. Now the world price is lower. And in this case, when the world price is lower, consumers could have gained areas B and D. Okay. And actually, goes back here. Sorry about that. Maybe, fortunately, wondering. When the country is too small to affect the world price, then free trade actually always increases the total surplus. This is saying it never does, which is the exact opposite. So that that part of the statement would in fact be false. Okay. Let's go to number 3. Okay, so now we've got a country, Colombia, that's open to free trade for soybeans. Colombia is small, can't affect the world price. Okay, so let's start to go with that. If the world price is way down here, then yes, the demand would go all the way down to the world price, which is at 400. So it'd be area again below the demand curve to the price of 400, not the price of 700 because that's the domestic price. But because there's free trade, the world price is going to be the dominant price. That's at 400. The producer surplus, though, is the area above the supply curve up to the world price. So that would be from supply curve up to 400. So that it can be right there, a potentially smaller area. How much is it going to import? It's going to import the difference between 40 and 160. Which gives us our difference of 120. And then let's say it imposes a tariff of $200. What's going to happen then? So then we need to raise the price up by 200. And that's what they do here. So it raises the price from 400 up to 600. So you can see there it's going to increase the producer surplus because now it's the area above the supply curve up to the $600 price. That the government is going to collect some revenue now because they are taxing the imported items. How much is imported? Well, now at the $600 price, it's going to be the difference between 80 and 120. So it's going to be 40 that's imported. That's our distance at the top here, times the 200. So area D is going to be 40. The area of D would be length times width. So 40 times 200, which gives us the 8,000. And then again, just follow your simple rules of geometry. You should be able to solve 1/2 base times height to get area C and E. B and F, treat them together. Oh, look at that, even solves for us the individual areas. But again, use your equations, 1/2 base times height for the triangle and length times width for the rectangles and squares. Okay. So now when we're looking at the tariff here in Guatemala, and the price is 550, how much is it going to import? Again, it's going to be the difference between 400 and 100. So it's going to be 300. And if it wants to reduce it to 200, how much of a tariff would it have to impose? Well, then you kind of have to raise the line up. And it looks like it's happening when the price is 585. So at 585, we're now talking about the difference between 150 and 350, which is 200. So they would need to have a $35 tariff. How much would that bring in? That's going to be your 35 times the 200 tons for the 7,000. Okay. So international trade, poor countries can learn technological advances that are made by other countries. So which of these benefits of free trades would this describe? That would be the enhanced flow of ideas. This is sort of definitional, so there's not very much for me to discuss with this. And then finally, we have a congresswoman from a state with several tire manufacturers, and they're saying that the government should impose a tariff because it could be used for various kinds of weapons. The use of weapons makes that a national security argument, which is why that's being used. Right there. Okay. That is chapter 9.